In this video, I'm going to show you exactly where I put my money every time I get paid as a millionaire. And don't worry, I'm going to break this down into really simple steps that anyone can follow, even if you're just getting started. You know, it's funny. When I first started managing my own money, I do what most people do. My paycheck would hit my checking account, and then, well, it would just kind of disappear. There was no real plan, no system. I was just hoping that there was going to be enough money left for bills at the end of the month. But then I learned something that changed everything. And today I'm going to show you the exact system that I use. Think of it like a roadmap for your money. We're going to go through 6 simple steps, and I'm going to share all the mistakes that I made so you can avoid them as well. The first step is an emergency fund. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, emergency fund, really? That's not very exciting. And trust me, I felt the exact same way when I first started, but here's the thing. This is actually the foundation that makes everything else possible. Let me share with you a quick story about why this matters so much. So a few years ago, I had this moment where my car broke down and it needed a $2,000 repair. At the time, I had no emergency fund. And you know what that meant? I had to put it on a credit card with a 20% interest rate. That $2,000 repair ended up costing me way more in the long run. And that's when I realized I needed a better system. Here's what I do now. I keep 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a high yield savings account. Let me break down in simple terms what this means. If your monthly expenses are about $3,000, rent, food, bills, and all the basic stuff, you'd want to save between $9,000 and $18,000 in your emergency fund. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, but don't worry, you can build that up over time. My personal favorite is with Wealthfront, and no, they're not sponsoring this video. They're currently paying 4.25% APY, which means your emergency fund actually makes you money while it's just sitting there. And it's totally safe. They're FDIC insured up to $8 million. I actually use this account for 2 things: my emergency fund and any bigger purchases I'm planning in the next year or 2. You basically want to give every single dollar a job while it's waiting to be used. Number 2 is basic living expenses. This is where I see a lot of people get tripped up, so I'm going to share a really simple system that I use. Here's something that most people don't realize about checking accounts. They're actually one of the worst places to keep your money. What I do is pretty straightforward. I only keep about 1.5 months worth of living expenses in my checking account, just enough for my mortgage, food, bills, and all the essential stuff. And I add that extra half month as a buffer just in case something unexpected pops up. Step number 3 is debt management. Let me tell you a personal story about debt management that completely changed my whole perspective on money. When I first got my credit card, I made a classic mistake that I'm betting some of you can relate to. I remember looking at my credit limit and was like, $3,000? That's free money. I'm gonna go out and buy some shoes, went shopping, went out to eat, and before I knew it, I was close to maxing out that first card. And then came the day where the bill was due, and I'll never forget that feeling in my stomach when I realized I couldn't pay it off. That was one of the biggest reality checks I've ever gotten, and in that moment, it taught me something really important about debt that I want to share with you. Now, before I share with you what I learned, not all debt is created equal. Let me explain this in a way that's gonna make perfect sense for you. Think of debt like a leak in your boat. High interest rate, that's anything over 15%, is like a massive hole that's sinking you really fast. And the low interest rate debt under 15% is more like a small leak that's manageable. And what I do now is I use something called the Avalanche Method. And don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Let me walk you through how it works with real numbers that's going to make this crystal clear. Imagine you have 3 types of debt: a credit card with $5,000 on it at 20% interest rate, a car loan with $10,000 at a 7% rate, and then the student loans for $20,000 at a 5% interest rate. The Avalanche Method means you pay out the highest interest rate first, in this case, the credit card. And the reason is it's because it's the one that's hurting you the most. Think of it like treating the worst injury first. Step number 4 are retirement accounts. Now, I've got to be honest with you about something. I haven't always been the biggest fan of 401ks, and it's because I did a deep dive into 401ks, and I want to share with you what I've discovered. Here's the thing about 401ks. They're like a hammer. A hammer isn't good or bad by itself. It depends on how you use it. And just like you want to use only a hammer to build an entire house, you shouldn't only use a 401k to build your retirement. Let me break this down in a way that's going to save you years of confusion. If you're working a 9 to 5 and your company offers a match on your 401k contributions, that's literally free money. I don't care what anyone else says, you take that free money when it's offered. Let's make this super practical. Let's say your company matches up to 5% of your salary. If you're making $50,000 per year, that means if you put in $2,500, your company is just going to add another $2,500. That's a 100% return on your money before you even invest it. This is where most financial advisors stop, but I'm going to keep going. While the 401k match is great, it shouldn't be your only strategy. Think of it like having multiple backup plans, because let's be honest, none of us knows exactly what the future holds. And that's why I always recommend looking into a Roth IRA as well. The beauty of a Roth IRA is that once you put money in it and invest into it, all your gains are going to be tax-free when you take them out at retirement. It's like planting a money tree that the taxman can't touch. The easiest thing to do is to contribute to it and then track an S&P 500 index fund like with VOO or VTI. Let me give you an example with real numbers. Let's say you're 25 years old and you start investing $6,000 per year into a Roth IRA. If you do this every year until you're 65 and your investments earn an average annual return of 8%, which is the historical average of the S&P 500, at age 65, you'll have over $1.6 million. And remember, that's all tax-free money in retirement. But here's a real kicker. If you started at age 20 instead of 25, the same investment strategy would give you over $2.4 million by age 65. That's the power of starting early and letting compound interest work its magic over time. Step number 5 are additional investment accounts. Now, this is where things are going to get really interesting, and I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers here, but just stick with me because this is going to be the most important part of the video. Here's what most financial advisors are going to tell you. Just open up a brokerage account, put your money into an S&P 500 index fund, and then call it a day. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of what I do too, but here's what they don't tell you. If you only do what everyone else does, you're only going to get what everyone else gets. Let me share something that I call the 50-40-10 rule. It's super simple. 50% of your money goes to necessities. We talked about that earlier. 40% goes to your investments, and then 10% goes to your fun stuff, your wants. Now, I know what some some of you guys are thinking 40% for investments, that's impossible. But trust me, start with whatever percentage you can, even if it's just 5%, and then work your way up. Now let me talk about something that might surprise you, and that's Bitcoin. And before you think, oh no, here's another crypto bro, let me tell you, I was actually a huge skeptic at first. Back in 2015, I thought Bitcoin was just another internet fad, and man, was I wrong. Let me share with you what changed my mind and why I believe this is one of the most important financial opportunities of our lifetime. See, a lot of people look at Bitcoin and they just see the price going up or down, but there's something much bigger happening here. Think about it this way. Every single time in history when humans discovered a better form of money, it changed everything. Gold was better than seashells and paper money was more portable than gold. And now we're watching the birth of something entirely new. Digital money that no government or bank can control or inflate. Let me break down why this matters for your financial future. We all know that inflation is eating away at our savings, right? So if you have $100,000 in the bank, it loses about 3 to 7% of its purchasing power every single year. That's like having a hole in your boat. You're slowly sinking and you might not even realize it. And this is where Bitcoin comes in, and here's what makes it really special. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever. And compare that to the US dollar, where they can and they do print trillions of dollars whenever they want. It's like having a limited edition anything. The more they make, the less valuable each one becomes. Now let me show you some numbers that blew my mind when I first saw them. Over the past decade, Bitcoin has averaged about 190% returns annually. That means if you put just $1,000 of Bitcoin in 2013, well, let's say you wouldn't be watching YouTube videos about money anymore. But here's something even more interesting. It's not just retail investors anymore. Major institutions are getting involved. We're talking BlackRock, Fidelity, massive insurance companies, even traditional banks are starting to offer Bitcoin services. And these big corporations, they're not dumb because they see what's coming as well. The adoption curve of Bitcoin looks almost exactly like the internet in the 1990s. Remember when people said the internet was just for nerds and criminals? Now try to imagine life without it. Bitcoin is following the same exact path, just at a much faster pace. Here's how I personally approach Bitcoin investing and how I recommend others start. If you're brand new to this, just start small. Maybe take 1 or 2% of your investment money and buy Bitcoin. Think of it like buying insurance for your financial future. As you learn more and get more comfortable, you might increase that to 5 to 10%. Some maximalists even go up to 50 to 100% of their net worth, but that's a personal choice based on your risk tolerance. Now I need to address something really important. Bitcoin can be incredibly volatile. You might see your investments drop 50% in a few months, but here's the key, just zoom out. Because every single person who has held Bitcoin for at least 4 years has made money. Literally every single one. And look, I get it. This might sound crazy, and it sounded crazy to me too at first. But remember what Warren Buffett says, be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. Right now, most people still don't understand Bitcoin, and that's your opportunity. And here's what I recommend. Don't take my word for it. Start with a small amount, maybe just $100, learn how it works, read about it, watch what's happening in the financial world, because the more you learn, the more you're gonna understand why this is so revolutionary. And hey, even if you decide Bitcoin isn't for you right now, at least you're gonna understand it. Because let me tell you, in the next decade, understanding Bitcoin will be just as important as understanding how to use the internet. Step number 6 is real estate and alternative investments. Now, speaking of revolutionary ways to build wealth, let me share with you something that's completely changed my perspective on real estate investing, and that's short-term rentals. And just like Bitcoin created a new way to think about money, short-term rentals have created a whole new way to think about real estate. You know how most people think that you need hundreds of thousands of dollars to get started in real estate, or that you're gonna be stuck with a 30-year mortgage? Well, that's what I thought too, until I discovered short-term rentals. Let me show you why this business model is so powerful. Think about this. With traditional real estate investing, you can make maybe 68% cash flow if you're lucky. You buy a house for, let's say, $300,000, you rent it out, maybe make $1,500 to $2,000 per month if everything goes perfectly. And that's before any maintenance issues or vacancies come up. But with short-term rentals, everything changes. I'm talking about potentially generating the same cash flow with just $10,000 to start. No massive mortgage, no huge down payment, just smart strategy. It's like the difference between opening up a small coffee shop versus trying to build a Starbucks. You can start small and they can scale up. And here's what makes short-term rentals so interesting. You're not just collecting rent, you're running a hospitality business. So instead of making $100 a night on a long-term rental, you can make $200 to $300 plus per month a night on Airbnb. And then once you multiply that over a month, you're looking at 10 times the cash flow of traditional real estate investing. Here's where it gets even better, the tax benefits. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all the technical details, but let me tell you and put it this way. If you do this right, Uncle Sam becomes your business partner in the best possible way. And let me share with you something really exciting about short-term rentals that most people have no idea about. There's actually a special loophole in the tax code that can be a complete game changer for you. Now, you know how most real estate investments are considered passive income? Well, with short-term rentals, if you or your spouse work 100 hours per year on the short-term rental business, that's less than 2 hours per week, you can actually qualify this as active income. And why this matters is because now you can write off your losses against your W-2 job income. Let me break this down in simple terms. Let's say you make $150,000 per year at your day job. With the short-term rental tax loophole, you could potentially use the paper losses from your short-term rental business to significantly reduce your taxable income. And here's the best part. You're still making great cash flow from the property while getting these tax benefits. And keep in mind, this is only applicable if you own the property. And it gets even better. With Trump returning to office, there's a good chance we're going to see the return of 100% bonus depreciation. And what this means in plain English is instead of spreading out the depreciation of your property over 27.5 years, you might be able to take it all in year one. That's going to be a massive tax benefit right up front. I remember when I first learned about these tax benefits, I actually thought it was too good to be true. But after diving deep into the tax code and working with my CPA, I realized that this is exactly what the government wants you to do. They want private citizens to provide housing solutions. They're going to be willing to give you tax incentives to do so. Now, I know what some of you guys might be thinking, okay, this sounds great and all, but isn't this a lot of work? And you're right, it's not passive income, at least not at first. But here's the beautiful thing. Once you set up your system systems and team, it can become mostly hands-off. Plus, with today's technology and tools, managing a short-term rental is easier than ever. And let me share with you something really exciting about this business model. The barrier to entry is so much lower than traditional real estate. Instead of needing around $50,000 or more for the down payment, you start with around $10,000 for furnishing and initial setup. It's like having the benefits of real estate investing without all the massive upfront costs. And look, I totally get it. This might seem overwhelming at first, and that's exactly how I felt. But just like with Bitcoin, the key is to start small and learn as you go. You don't need to build an empire overnight. Start with one property, learn the ropes, and then grow from there. And speaking of starting small, this actually leads me to one of my favorite strategies for getting into this business, which is Airbnb arbitrage. I've created several detailed videos about this on my channel, but let me give you a quick overview of how this works. Think of Airbnb arbitrage as all the benefits of short-term rentals that we just talked about, but without ever having to buy a property. I know, again, it sounds too good to be true, but just stick with me here. Here's how it works. Instead of buying a property, you rent it out long-term from a landlord, then you rent it out as a short-term rental on Airbnb. It's like being the middle person between a landlord and travelers. It's a simple concept, but the numbers can be incredible. Let me walk you through a real-life example. Let's say you find a home that rents for $2,000 a month. Most people would just live there and pay the rent. But what if you could just turn that same home into a cash flowing business? Instead of living there, you furnish it nicely and list it on Airbnb, and after paying all the rent, utilities, and other expenses, you can be looking at $2,000 to $3,000 plus per month in cash flow from just one property that you don't even own. Well, here's what's really exciting. Once you prove this concept works with one property, you can start scaling it. Think about it. One property can make you $2,000 a month in profit. What could 5 properties do? 10? And remember, you're not taking on massive mortgages to do this. Now, I can go super deep into the exact strategies for this, and I have other videos on how to do that. But here's what you need to know right now. This is a real business model that's working for thousands of people right now. And it's not some get-rich-quick scheme. It's providing real value and solving a real need in the market. And if you want to dive deeper into how to set up your first profitable Airbnb, I've got a free 30-minute training that breaks down all this step by step. I cover how to find profitable markets, how to talk to landlords, how to stand out in competitive markets, and how to manage your Airbnb remotely with just 30 minutes per week. Best of all, you're going to learn how to do this without having to buy a property yourself. If you're interested, just click the link in the description to learn more. Now let's pull everything together here. We've covered a lot today, from the basis of emergency funds all the way to advanced strategies like Bitcoin investing, short-term rentals, and Airbnb arbitrage. But here's what I want you to remember. Every single person who's successful right now with money started exactly where you are right now. The key is to start with the foundations. Get that emergency fund set up, handle your basic expenses, tackle any high interest rate debt, and then as you build the base, you start exploring these more advanced strategies that we talked about. Maybe start with putting aside $100 a month into Bitcoin, maybe start learning about short-term rentals, or maybe even dive deep into Airbnb arbitrage. The point isn't to do everything at once, is to start somewhere and then keep building. Remember, building wealth isn't about getting lucky with one big move. It's about having the right systems in place and making smart decisions consistently over time. It's about seeing opportunities that others miss and having the courage to take action when you see them. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. And follow me on Instagram at The Legacy Investing Show, where I'm active daily. I'm always sharing new strategies and ways to build wealth there. And don't forget, if you want to take a deep dive into setting up your first profitable Airbnb without having to buy a property, check out my free 30-minute training. The link is in the description below. And drop a comment letting me know which step you're currently working on. I read every single comment and try to help where I can. That's it for today. Go build your wealth. I'll talk to you soon.